I just wanted to come on here and give thanks to God about where I am in my life. Um, he has truly blessed me, and I'm just very, very grateful. Um, and I would get to this point sometimes, like in the past, and I would forget, and I would just go off and put my attention towards other things, and that's not what I'm trying to do right now in my life. I want to moving forward. I want to put God first, and I want to feed my soul with the word, feed my spirit, the spirit that dwells within me. And so I was reading Job, and Job is humbling. I don't think I've ever gotten through the entire book. Right, in the beginning of the chapter, it talks about Job's wealth, his servants, to his livestock, and then it talks about you know I guess a conversation, not even a conversation, but a small dialogue happens between God and the devil, and he said, let's see. Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. And yes, Job was definitely put to the test because he lost all his cattle from he owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 donkeys, and a large number of servants. And it dawned on me that Job employed a lot of people. He gave people a job so that they can sustain themselves and their families. And so I never caught that before. I don't think I actually realized that he gave a lot of people a job so that they could buy food for themselves, so that they can raise their family, and they can buy cattle themselves, and work a small piece of land that they have. And so another thing I noticed is that when the messengers came back to back to tell him the bad news, when I read that, I read it like, who are these messengers? But, thinking about it now, Job, because he was, I don't blame Job for not realizing what was going on. But to me, it felt like something good was about to happen to him, and he was about to go through a really big storm, but at the end of it, he will be blessed. And people say that like, oh, when stuff is going bad, that a blessing is about to happen. But it's hard though. I was just talking to an elder, and she was saying that it's hard though to realize that when you're in the thick of the storm, and like Job, he had back to back bad news. Not only him losing his livestock, but also his children dying, the house collapsing on them. And so, just back to back bad news, and then his servants being put to death. And, I think the beautiful thing too was his friends, especially, it says in chapter 2, verse 12, when they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. They began to weep out loud, and they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads. But there comes a moment in chapter 4 where his friend Eliphaz, I know I'm not saying that wrong, the Temanite, he actually reminds Job that if you have been upright, if you have been a good person, do not think that you did something for this to happen. And he actually says, For hardship does not spring from the soil, nor does trouble sprout from the ground, yet man is born to trouble as surely as sparks fly upward. And it's just telling Job that, hey, it's not because you've done something that this is all happening to you. Not necessarily. If you know that you have been a good person, an upright person, a righteous person, and you have praised God for everything that you've had, that you've been blessed with, then do not think that God is angry with you, that he is cursing you, but he is being tested, right? So as I read chapter 4, it kind of goes into like this dialogue or poetry, something, a mix. And in chapter 4, verse 18, it says, if God places no trust in servants, if he charges his angels with error, how much more those who live in houses of clay, whose foundation are in the dust and who are crushed more readily than a moth. And it's like, it's coming to me now. If God places no trust in his servants, and if he charges his angels with error, how much more those who live in houses of clay. And I can relate to Job when recently, when it was a lot going on in my life, I did not turn to God enough, not like this. And like if I did, it was this arrogance that I had, and I apologize to God. I'll always be sorry for thinking that, kind of like Job. It's like he's thinking, well, I've done nothing but, I've been a good person. I've had burnt offerings. I did burnt offerings for my children just in case they have sinned, and he felt like he has done everything right. So why is this happening to me? And at first, in the beginning, he still, it says, let's see, let me find the scripture. Facing me off with them. Another messenger came. Oh, please, perhaps. Does Job fear? Basically, I think the first thing, I'm trying to find it because he's still saying the curse on the house, because one day came to visit themselves. Nothing but not stretch out straight he has. It will surely everything he has is in your power, but on the man himself do not lay a finger. Says so feasting, drinking, and the messenger came and said oxen were plowing. And it's interesting. It says one day when Job's sons and daughters were feasting and drinking. I find that interesting. That's still in chapter 1, verse 13. But it also says his sons, in chapter 1, verse 4, his sons used to hold feasts in their homes on their birthdays, and they would invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. When a period of feasting ran its course, Job would make arrangements for them to be purified. So Job was doing everything within his power, even if, like I said, even if his children were sinning, he would present a burnt offering and for them. And it said this was Job's regular custom. Early in the morning, he would sacrifice a burnt offering for each of them, thinking, perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. So he was not only covering himself, he was covering his children, like his whole family. He wanted them to be just covered by God, and he wanted to ask for forgiveness, and he did that regularly. Let's see. So this man got up and tore his robe and shaved his head. Spread out your hand and say, let's see. Listen, have you considered my... Let's see. Very well. From roaming the earth. Okay, this is it right here. So chapter 1, verse 20. At this, Job got up and tore his robe and shaved his head. Then he fell to the ground and worshiped and said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. So, in all this, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. So, this was after he lost his cattle, his sheep, camels, oxen, donkeys, and servants. And it was like, to me, he automatically said that, but after I guess, let's see. Let's see. Chapter 2, let's start from chapter 2, verse 3. Or, well, let's just start from chapter 2. On another day, the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them to present himself before him. And the Lord said to Satan, where have you come from? Satan answered the Lord, from roaming throughout the earth, going back and forth on it. Then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. And he still maintains his integrity, though you incited me against him to ruin him without any reason. Skin for skin, Satan replied. A man will give all he has for his own life. But now stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely curse you to your face. The Lord said to Satan, very well then, he is in your hands, but you must spare his life. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and afflicted Job with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. Then Job took a piece of broken pottery and scraped himself with it as he sat among the ashes. His wife said to him, are you still maintaining your integrity? Curse God and die. He replied, you are talking like a foolish woman. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble? So in the beginning, Job is, still believing that God is good, and that, maybe he's waiting for things to subside or for the calamity to pass. But he gets poetic, and he gets pretty dark because his body is he has afflicted Job with painful sores. Okay, this is chapter 2, verse 7. Afflicted Job with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. And then Job took a piece of broken pottery and scraped himself with it as he sat among the ashes. So you could just imagine someone that has lost everything. His wife is no help. She's telling him to, why are you keeping your integrity? Curse God and perish. And he even tells her, even in that state, you are talking like a foolish woman. And this is after he has the painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. And so, let's see, his 3 friends. I wish I knew how to pronounce the names. Heard about the troubles that had come upon him. I'm in chapter 2, verse 11. Heard about all the troubles that had come upon them. They set out from their homes and met together by agreement to go and sympathize with him and comfort him. When they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. They began to weep out loud, and they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads. And then they sat with him on the ground for 7 days and 7 nights. No one said a word to him because they saw how great his suffering was. So that's interesting, right? Like, imagine friends come and visit you for a week. You know, you're going through a lot and they come and visit you for a week, but they don't say a word, and how could they, right? What could they say to soothe, someone that has not only lost their children, lost their livestock, which is their wealth, their servants have been murdered, and now they have sores from the top of their head to their feet, painful sores. And so, but I think it's like, I won't say that was wrong for them to not say anything, because just by them being there, I'm sure it comforted Job. I'm sure, because when we're alone and we're going through something, it makes us feel like we're really alone. We might even think that God is not even with us, right? So the fact that he had friends that heard about what was going on with him and came and sat with him for 7 days and 7 nights, they were still good friends. Even though they didn't say a word, those are still good friends. And sometimes maybe we need friends like that, right? We need friends that don't just talk our ear off, or we need friends that could listen. Or if we can't even talk, we're so just going through it so much where we can't even talk, they still come and sit with you. And so that is amazing. Those are good friends. And let's see. And then after the 7 days, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of his birth. So then it goes into really dark poetry of him talking about, cursing the day he was born. And I think one of his friends was still there with him, because it didn't, at least he was, because it didn't say that they left. But after 7 days, this is what Job had to say, which was really dark and depressing. It's just him cursing the day that he was born, even the day that he was conceived. And then, it was just really dark. And so one of his friends actually say, consider, okay, this is chapter 4, verse 7. Consider now, who being innocent has ever perished? Where were the upright ever destroyed? And so he's reminding him, like, if you've been righteous, if you've been upright, why do you think that this is your fault? And why do you think that it's something that you did? But, like an elder was saying to me, when you're in it, you don't realize that a blessing is coming or any of that. All you could do, especially having, his heart was broken because his kids were gone, and then his body hurt as well. So those are two different types of pains going on. So I don't blame him, but that is something that happens to us, right? When we're going through so much, whether it's physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, we forget that it could be a test, and we forget that there could be a blessing at the end of it, or a lesson. It could be a lesson that we could take with us for the rest of our life that could bless us moving forward. And so I hope you guys like this summary of Job. I am actually just trying to better understand chapter 4 and 5. I've read 4 and 5. I'm actually on chapter 5, verse 22. And I read it, but I read it over and over so that I can get like a better understanding, and I can come to you guys and give you a word. And so be blessed and be a blessing.